Well, I'm going to pray again because Jesus is awesome. Amen. Oh, Lord, I need you. You are the reason we are here, God, and I just pray that you give me the right words to impart my heart when it comes to worship to you, Lord. And Father, let your Spirit just break forth, because this day is your day. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. My dad asked me, so I'm going to have Mike share what worship means to him and what goes through his head when he's prepping for worship, and I'd like you to share that too. And worship is this. I kind of dressed for the occasion. It should be pure and simple. It doesn't have to be this long, dragged out, big occasion. That's what it should start with, is it should be you undressed, undone up, in front of your Maker, and having a blast. I mean, to me, that is what worship is all about. It has nothing to do with the fancy or the showy, because it has to start with you in front of Jesus. I think you guys have probably noticed a lot of times when I do lead worship, it tends to just be me being solo, and that typically ends up because I don't have time for practice. And, when it's practice of one, everyone's going to show up on time and, all that. But it also is because I know that worship sometimes can be exhausting, leading worship. And I know that, when you're doing it all the time and you have someone who's just, when you're working on something all the time and someone just says, hey, just take a breather, I'll do this time. There's a ministry in that as well. But it also is because that's almost the way I like worship the most. It's just me and Jesus and my guitar. Because that's when I know that I'm not being distracted. Because after a while, it's just kind of secondhand, whatever. You just kind of do it and don't even think about it because you're with Jesus and you're worshiping. The funny thing is, when I'm leading worship, you guys basically get to hear everything that's going on between me and Jesus in my heart. Because, there's not much you can hide from Jesus. You can try. You can definitely try. But, with Jedis, there's no try, there's only do, right? So, why do I worship? Because I know me. And I know all the stupid crap that goes through my mind in my life, all the times that I've failed. And yet, there's this amazing person who still loves me, no matter what I do. And I fail all the time. I worship because there's grace. I worship because God has saved me from my own stupidity. I look back through my life and, when I was younger, I was the goody-goody. I was the pastor's kid. I was I was still a little snot, because who isn't? But I didn't have the massive rebellion. I didn't get in a fight with an Etch-a-Sketch, which is a new way of saying tattoos, apparently. But I didn't have the major, I need to go to drugs and have lots of sex and get drunk all the time. And, I didn't have that. And, you'd have these people who come by and they're like, God set me free from my sex addiction and my alcohol addiction and my drug addiction. And I'm like, I love Jesus. And when you're younger, that feels hollow because you're like, well, God didn't really save me from anything. Boy, was I wrong. Because I look at my life and I look about how my brain works, which is a scary, scary place. And I think, good grief, where would I be if I didn't have Jesus? How much hurt would I have suffered if I didn't know Jesus? And the funny thing is I still look and think, I knew Jesus and I still did that. And you're like, good job. But then I look at all the times when I was so close to veering to the right or to the left, and I wasn't just staying on the course. And then all of a sudden, I'd be alone, because some temptation, whether it was a guy or bad influences or whatever, all of a sudden something would be just ripped from my life. And I'm like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. I'm a good person. I think I'm cool. Maybe people just don't like me. And I was talking with Annette one time, and I was like, a lot of times it's not that I don't want to ask for help, I just forget, because a lot of times I've been alone. So I don't have the chance or the opportunity to physically ask someone for help, because it just tends to be me. And I'm sitting here, and I remember thinking, because there was this one guy that I was incredibly tempted by. I mean, he had all the looks, all the everything, and he was exactly what I shouldn't have wanted. And I was like, and I was to that point where I was like, you know what? I don't even care. And I look back and I'm like, wow, that was intelligent. And then all of a sudden, he just disappeared from my life. And I was just like, he's not calling me. He won't respond to anything. I found out later that he got his best friend's girlfriend pregnant. To me, that's not a glamorous story. But that's why I worship. Because I almost threw everything that I know and everything I believe out the window. And when I got too close, Jesus just ripped it from me. And now I'm so thankful for that. So you ever wonder why, God, this just didn't work out? Why am I alone? Why do I feel alone? I may not even be alone, but I feel forsaken. I have Jesus, and he just wraps me in his arms, and he's like, I knew better. I knew better. And I got in a discussion with a friend, and he had been wanting to pursue a relationship with me, and Jesus said no. It wasn't any fault of his. Jesus said no, and I said, okay, no. That's how it is. And he looked at me, he was like, it'd have been nice to know why. And I was like, well, I'm not the only one that could ask Jesus why. He's like, well, I did. And I said, okay, so what did he say? And he said, you're not ready. And I was like, well, that is that. He was like, but what does that mean? And you know what I told him? I said, apparently you haven't met the Jesus that I know. Because I know he loves me and loves me enough to keep me from being stupid. I mean, and I've got a great dad, and I know there are times when he told me no, and I was like, whatever. But he wasn't being mean. Jesus wasn't being mean when he said no. That's right. Because he knows me. He has a plan for my life, for prosperity, and not for a relationship that would end in divorce or, He has a plan for me. So when I ask why and he says no, that's okay. Because he loves me and he knows the plan that he has for me. And I'm just this
weird one stumbling through life, and thank God for Jesus, because he's the lamp that's to my feet. But I've had a lot of great influences in my life, a lot of great mentors. Mike Sharp's sister-in-law, Tom's wife, Trina, she and I clicked, and she was basically everything I wanted to be when I was in high school. She was a consummate worship leader, super teacher, super decorator. This woman, I swear that, she has a great sense of humor too, and she can laugh at herself, and she does. It's really fun to watch her, to read her Facebook posts, because she has some of the weirdest stuff that comes out of her, and it's just hilarious. But she has that joy, and she has that confidence and that security in who she is in Jesus. And I was 14 or 15, and Trina said, "Let's go out for dinner." And I remember it was the Applebee's in Greeley. And I remember being a little weirded out because she was so loud and talking about Jesus. And I was like, Trina, But she shared with me her favorite psalm. And, it's been over 10 years since I had that dinner. And I still remember it. Because she showed a passion for worship, and a passion for what it meant for her to worship. And the funny thing is, it makes me remember a quote from You've Got Mail. It's me, it has to be a movie quote, but there's a small bookshop owner in a large chain shop, and he's end up taking her bookstore away. And they're falling in love during this point, but don't know that it's each other that they're falling in love with. It's a really kind of weird story, but they end up meeting. And he had been telling her through email, hey, this is business. It's not personal. It's just business. So you just go at it. You fight to the death, And at the end, she loses her shop. She fought. She did it business-like and everything. And the guy looks at her and says, it wasn't personal, it was business. And she said, you know what? If it was anything, it should have been personal. Because this was my life, this was my legacy. My mom passed me down the store. If it should have been anything, it should be personal. That is the wisdom I'm going to impart to you about worship today. Because if anything, it should be personal. So, Psalm 63. Sorry, we are kicking it old school today. So, for those of you who actually still bring your Bibles to church, good job. It's Psalm 63. There's Bibles in the back. Yeah, and there are Bibles in the back somewhere-ish. And I will be reading it to you, but sometimes it's nice to follow along. And I'm totally being gigged today on Rockslot because obviously I'm sitting on my stool and I'm reading, hiding behind my barrier. One of these days I'll just book it back to the back and start screaming just to break the barrier. So Psalm 63, and I didn't look up any Greek or Hebrew or whatever, so sorry, Daddy. Psalm 63, verse 1. O God, you are my God. My God. Oh, not, oh God, you are a God of the universe. Oh God, you are my God. Early I will seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. This is the ultimate love song. I mean, really. Oh God, you're mine. I think about you when I wake up in the morning. I need you like I need water. Like I'm parched in the middle of a desert and it's desperation. I love that. I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory, because your loving kindness is better than life. My lips shall praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I lift up my hands in your name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness. And my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate you in the night watches, because you have been my help. Therefore, in the shadow of your wings I will rejoice. My soul follows close behind you. Your right hand upholds me. My Jesus, my God. So, honestly, if there is anything that I can impart to you about worship, is He's mine. And I pray that that's your thought process as well, that He's yours. He's my God. He's the one that saved me from so much stupidity. He's the one who's forgiven my mistakes, forgiven my sins. His blood has covered everything I have done, I'm doing, and everything I will do. Forever. I mean, come on, how can you complain? Isaiah 43 is also one of my favorites, because it says, "Thus says the Lord who formed you, O Israel, the God who made you, O Jacob. Fear not, for I am with you. I have called you by name. You are mine." So it's not just me saying, "Oh, Jesus, you're mine," but He's calling back to me, "You're mine." And, it goes on to talk about how He gave countries for my ransom. I mean, like, my love language is gifts. Like, I love to give gifts. I love to get gifts. I just love gifts, So for me, that speaks volumes to me in the fact that Jesus would give countries so I would be with Him. What? Countries? I'm worth countries? Like, that to me is huge. Fear not, when you walk through the fires, the floods, the waters, I will hold you. It's beautiful. This next verse, I'm going to have an incredibly hard time getting through, because this is me, like, to the fullest. After Jesus was crucified, and He was in the tomb, and He rose again, the women, all the Sabbaths had passed, so the women were coming to make sure Jesus wasn't smelly and, finish the burial process. And there's an empty tomb. And all these women are freaking out, as I would be too. And Mary's standing there by the tomb weeping. And she wept, and she stooped down, and she looked into the tomb. And then the angel said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" Classic male, female. What are you crying about? And she said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they've laid Him." I think about all the times that I've felt alone, or felt abandoned, or whatever. And I know that I've never truly known what it's like to be alone, because I've had Jesus with me for the last 26 years. That's the beautiful thing about getting saved when you're 3. You don't know what it's like to be without Jesus. And I can just see this, because this would be me. My hope, the man who has set me free, is gone. And now I can't even minister to him by taking care of his body after he's dead. Now he's really gone. Like, someone took him away and I don't know what to do. They've taken away my Lord. And now when she had said this, she turned around and she saw Jesus. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" And she, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, just tell me where you've laid him, and I will take care of him." This is why this is so me, because I would be weeping so hysterically. Someone's talking to me, and I just she doesn't even recognize that it's him, the Savior of her soul, the love of her life. You know, she's, Jesus, I don't know where he is. You know, and she's just like, what, who are you looking for? I don't know where he is. And he looks at her and says, "Mary." And she turned and said to him, "Teacher." It was that could have had a V8 moment, you know, like, "Oh, it's you. Never mind. I'm okay now." And Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and tell them I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, and to my God and to your God." It's so funny because I know that this isn't one of those passages that blows people away, but it sticks in my head, especially around Resurrection Sunday. You know, like, one of these days, if I can pull myself together, I want to write a monologue of Mary's as she retells this story. Because even after Trina telling me, "Oh God, you are my God," this is the passage that made it real to me. "You've taken away my Lord. If you just tell me where he is, I'll take care of him. You don't have to worry about a thing. Just let me take care of my Jesus." God, he's my God. It's such a beautiful thing. Like we've been talking about, how he looks, how he seeks for those who worship him in spirit and in truth. It goes straight back in to the Song of Solomon. "I am my beloved's, and he longs for me." Because the thing that we don't understand, or we do understand, but we just decide isn't relevant or isn't something that should color our every thought, he is God and we are not. But we get so engrossed in this brain cavity of ours, we forget, I'm not God. He's God, and I am not. Is there anyone here who just absolutely loves to be the outcast? I'm still waiting for someone to raise their hand. Just one day. You are such a liar. But we were made in the image, and that doesn't just limit us to 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth and 2 ears and 2 hands and 10 fingers and 10 toes. That doesn't limit us. It also created us with the characteristics and the attributes of God, because he made us to choose to want him, to choose to worship him, to choose to love him. Because, I mean, you know, it's one thing when, you know, like your parents, they love you. Sometimes they're a little weirded out by you. You know. The people who are your family are the people that you just, you know, they'll love me. And I'm secure in that. But there is something beautiful about somebody who chooses to love you. You know, and I know my parents have had to choose to love me on several occasions. But isn't that more just, "Oh, it's Brittany, I have to love her." Or, "Oh my gosh, Brittany's so amazing, I love her so much." That, to me, that's Jesus. But that's also how he wants to be seen by us. It's not, "Oh God, you could squish me like a bug." That's not it. "God, you're so amazing. That's why I worship you. God, you've saved me from its stupidity.
That's why I worship you. You have protected me all the times that I didn't know it, that I was walking through life clueless, which happens a lot. You know, just la-di-da-di-da. And Jesus is sitting there, you know. At work, we've been practicing casts, casting arms and legs, and I'd never had casts on before, you know, and so we're all volunteering for each other. And on last Thursday, I had 2 walking casts and 2 thumb spike casts. I'll show you guys the picture later. I couldn't walk because there's no ankle flexion, you know, and so to have both feet where you can't bend, it was the most awkward moment of my life, and that's saying something, you know, just because you can't, how to figure out how to walk, and the toes were a little too high, so I was kind of leaning back as well, but I couldn't really grab anything because I couldn't have any thumb movement, and it was just really funny, but I was like, this is so weird, and one of the other MAs looked at me and said, "You've never had a cast on?" And I said, "No." She's like, "Wow, you're lucky." And I was like, "Yeah, but I also have a guardian angel that's like, oh God, I have to watch Miranda," you know, because I know that that's exactly how it is a lot of times, is I'm walking through life, not necessarily turning my spiritual ears on, and how many times, countless times, I know that God saved me. I mean, just thinking about how when I was 11, wandering around the streets of Moscow, just playing, you know, I mean, I almost got stabbed by a Russian gang member. I'm still here. I know that God has a plan for my life. You can't refute that when you know that much room. And I could have been a completely different story. But you know what? I guarantee you that if that had happened, it still would have been a story for God's glory. Amen. So, again, why do I worship? Because I know that it pleases Him. I mean, we've all been in friendships, relationships where we go and do something that we don't necessarily want to do, but we know that the other person loves to do it. And so, okay, I'm going to do it. You know, that can be the way that you think about worship, even when you don't feel like doing it. Because there are times when you are all fleshed out, I don't want to do it. And I'm not going to do it. And what are you going to do about it? You know? But when we stop and when we think and get out of our little pity-potty party, we look at Jesus and see how much He longs for us. And enough said. If He longs for us to do it, what's stopping us? Our own vanity, our own self-worship. Oh, Miranda, you are so amazing, blah, blah, blah. That's what stops me. I get too consumed with this world and forget to turn on my epiphysics and mess with the world around me instead of letting the world around me mess with me. So, when it comes to preparation for worship, like, I know Mike loves hymns, and I have a deep childlike love for hymns because it's his fault. My dad always loved hymns, and he loved, oh man, now his name escapes me, J.B. Barry, somebody with a really deep voice. J.D. Sumner. You know, my dad, when you're on people who have a love for something, you know, it's pretty typical that you'll pick something up of that. You know, you can at least put up with it or whatever. But I'm a words person. I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a whatever. I love books. I love weird words. But I'm a words person, so obviously hymns are going to mean something to me. Because
if words are just words, what's the point? It's the meaning behind the words that really makes it better, makes it different. If you've ever been here while I've led worship, I'm sure I've said this at least once or twice, if not 5,000 times. This next song, I want you to pray it. And that is exactly what I mean for almost every single song that I pick. I want this to be the cry of my heart. Whether it's a praise song, whether it's a ballad, whether it's a hymn, whether it's a God, I'm angry, where are you song? Because you know what? Let's face it, we've all been there. Even though we have absolutely no right to ever feel that way, we still feel that way. What are you doing? My life is in shambles. What are you doing? How long, O Lord, will you look the other way? But I will trust in your unending love. Weren't you the one I gave my heart to? Did you lose it? Blessed be your name. You give and you take away, but my heart will say, blessed be your name. I like to be a person that, I think about what I say before I say it. I mean, and obviously we're all not always like that. You say stupid things and you're like, wait, I really want to put those words back in my mouth because that just, wow. But I know there are so many people who claim to have no filter and they think that's great. And there's a part of me that's really super envious because I am not that person. Because I know that my tongue holds the power of life and death. And there are times when death comes out of my mouth. But I don't know if that death has cut someone deep. Sometimes there is no way to know, even if you don't mean it. Like, you don't mean it to sound bad, but the way the other person takes it. So I like to think about the words that are coming out of my mouth, which is why lyrics are so incredibly important to me. And anytime I pick out a song, it's because I mean it. It's not because, oh, this is a fun song. Oh, I like the lyrics or the melody of the song. And don't get me wrong, there are some songs that have an amazing melody and I'm like, oh, I'm just not that musically astute to play it. But it has to mean something to me first. But I also think of them as faith statements. Because there are times when we sing songs that we are not even in the same continent of being that awesome. Oh, Jesus, you're my everything. I really, 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 really can't wait for the day when Jesus is my everything. He's my everything in some aspects. In my little waffle of life, like he's the syrup that has filled some of it. And there are other ones that are still like covered in butter. Syrup can't touch it yet. But I cannot wait till that time when I am at the point where he is my everything. So when I sing a lot of these songs, hear a lot of these songs, I look at it as I'm blessing myself with the fact that one day my soul will be so completely redeemed that that's what it will mean. You are the air I breathe. I mean, in all technicality, he is, because he's that God particle that holds all the oxygen together. If you want to get technical. But when I think about those moments where I am in a huff, and I am mad because my boss is late, or that person in front of me just cut me off in traffic. Didn't even give me a second glance, not even one of these. You know, the thanks so much, you're so nice. The pity wave or whatever, I don't know. Where's he there in my breath? He just got booted out of my car. You know, I can just see Jesus like gripping onto the bumper of my car. You're gonna let me back in? Let me just have my moment. But that moment officially belongs to him. Because you know what? He's the reason I'm still alive, and that person didn't crush me. He's the reason I have a job. So where I can be mad that my boss is late. He's the reason for everything. And I'm so excited when I get to that point where my brain can comprehend that he is my everything. Will it ever get there? God knows. Because I don't. But Dad pulled me up here a while ago, asked, so how do you hear from the Lord? Like, do you see things? Do you hear things? Do you feel things? Like, what do you feel? I get words. I get mostly sentences. And if you think that you've never heard from God, you're crazy. You can go join the loony bin. Even though the loony bin people would be like, you're in here because you have heard from God, it's not, it's the other way around. Because if you wait on the Lord, he'll talk to you. But we have to get to know what his language is like. For 5 years of my life, it was right after I experienced, I think, depression for the first time. Like, I've been mad and I've been sad, but I've not been like that for a very long time. I mean, my parents named me Miranda Joy, which means extraordinary joy. Like, you can't get any more of a stronger blessing than that. Hi, I am extraordinary joy. So it was a very weird and bizarre experience for me to be that unhappy for a very long time. It's just weird. It's like me not breathing or something. But I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, Jesus, you took care of everything. I'm the idiot, you're God, woohoo, And so when I would ask God a question, for 3 years, all I heard was, do you trust me? Yeah, I trust you. It's almost like that little snack, get back in line. No. Do you trust me? Yes, I trust you. And it's, again, that faith statement. I'm going to trust God through this. Because there are times when we don't feel like trusting him because of our silly physical people that we are. We want to see it. We want to feel it. We want to touch it. 3 years. That's a lot of conversations with Jesus to have one sentence said back to you, let me tell you. But when it ended, guess what? I trusted him. I do trust him. I've realized how much more laid back I've gotten because I'm like, Jesus got it, I'm good. I mean, laid back for me. Then 2 years after that, it went from, do you trust me, to, in my timing. Okay. Jesus, what about this? In my timing. In your timing, Lord, I trust you. What about this? In my timing. And that broke, now that I think about it, was when I really heard Jesus, like, strongly, where I had it was an actual conversation, where it wasn't necessarily him just ministering to me or me just pouring out my heart, praying in tongues. Like, there was an actual interaction where I swear to you, if you were in that room, you guys would have heard the conversation because it was that clear. I had had a friend accuse me of not knowing the character of God. And let me tell you, that made me mad. You're such a masochist. I can't believe you would ever think that God would do that. Of course, this was a eschatological conversation. He was pre-trib, I was post-trib, and how dare you condemn the Chinese people to that persecution again. And so, and he was someone that I very much looked up to, and so I was like, okay. So I went home and I was mad. I locked myself in my room, I turned off all the lights, I turned on some worship music, and I was like, okay, God, right here, right now, I need to know. I need to know now. Am I wrong? Am I seeing you wrong? Because if I'm seeing you wrong, you tell me. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell people things if I'm telling you them wrong about you. And he said, turn off the music. I was like, okay. I turned off the music. He said, sit down. So I sat on my bed, and he said, now, what do you know about being still? I said, be still and know you are God? He's like, yeah, that's right, so don't worry about it. It's so funny to go from like raging, smoke-and-eared mad to just, for 3 days, I was just like, he's got this. He's got this. I mean, like, I'm sure that there was a definite physical difference between how I walked into my room and how I floated around for the next 3 days. I mean, and talk about my worship. My worship after that moment was amazing. He longs for you. He wants to speak to you. And I dare you. Okay, God, I want to hear about this. And shut your mouth. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Mr. Milliken that used to say, if your mouth is open, your ears are shut. Maybe if you sit still long enough and seek, that's when you'll hear. So, yeah, that's my heart on worship. So let's do some worship, shall we?